What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Reason Reborn, episode 9. This will be the last episode of this year because the holidays are coming up. So happy holidays to everybody who's celebrating, whether it's Kwanzaa, Christmas, uh, Hanukkah. I almost forgot Hanukkah, like for some
Does anybody
reason.
really celebrate Kwanzaa?
Yeah, I actually have known people who celebrated Kwanzaa, and I found it very, very funny. I actually dated a girl whose screen name was her like email address was emoji.
Hmm. I need to hang out with more black people, I guess.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not common, but there are people. I personally think that you're guys who just don't want to buy people gifts, so you therefore you pick that because you're supposed to learn things from Kwanzaa, and it's cheaper to learn than buy stuff. So I think a lot of y'all who say you celebrate Kwanzaa, you're just lazy and cheap. That's all. Yeah, sorry. Okay, what can I say? Yeah.
All right.
Although this
Can
time,
you get over here?
hey, I'm just saying. I mean, you can't do like because you can't switch off of seriously when it comes to the economic like ramifications of these holidays. That is the cheapest one. It's like creating Festivus. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because it gets you out of having to do the traditional things. Like Hanukkah's not the choice. It's fucking 8 days of gifts.
Yeah.
So,
Which shows how much money they probably make.
all right. Although it's weird because the gifts that you usually see, like the traditional gifts, you look at those things and you're like, gosh, those were kind of cheap too. It's like y'all figured out a way to budget 8 days of gifts in a cheaper way than we figured out how to budget like
What?
one day of Christmas. That's crazy. Like Judaism is much more efficient financially.
They're smart cookies, man.
Yeah, very much so. All right, so we're just gonna gloss over some of the new stuff because I don't want to get too deep. It's the holidays. I'm not trying to get too sad, especially since one, the tax bill was voted on by the House today, and it's going to be voted on by the Senate later. It passed in the House, but there's one problem. Apparently, they did something called the McCarthy Law, which I have to look up. But that was enacted, and they have to revote tomorrow. So it's not official in the House of Representatives, but it'll more than likely be official in the Senate, barring anybody like decides, you know what, it's Christmas, I'm gonna give the people a gift, and I'm gonna say no, which we ain't gonna see. So bah humbug to us. Quickly, what's your thoughts on that?
I think you're a real fucking Scrooge, man. Like, all your Christmas joy is totally sarcastic. Sitting on Kwanzaa? What the
After this goddamn year, how can you be positive?
fuck? Insanity. Um, e- I guess I'm still in wait and see mode. I guess I'm saddened by how far this bill is getting. They've been pushing this since they got Trump in office. I mean, they've always been trying to push tax reform in general, but everybody thought once the first time they shut this shit down, after Trump's takeover, they're like, yeah, we can keep this out. But I was never quite as confident as a lot of people because I was like, they're still in office. They still hold a lot of control and sway here. They can still just keep pushing this thing until it somehow gets through. And it's not completely through yet, but it could be. And long term, it could have serious consequences for people. I know a lot of people are, I shouldn't say a lot, but I've seen people, celebrating the idea that it's going to give certain, tax breaks to people for however many years. I can't remember. It's not forever.
2 to 3.
Yeah.
That's the funny part. It's a 10-year thing where maybe 2 or 3 years might be good. Real quick, funny notes on it. First of all, it's not going to be enacted this year, so same tax rules applies. Last year, apply this year. So you still do get your health care credits and your student loan credits and things like that. Thank God. But when it kicks in, there's going to be a small break for anybody middle class or lower for about a 2-year period, maybe 3. After that, your tax rate is going to start gradually going up if you don't make a certain amount of money. While, of course, for the people who make more money, it's going to decrease as
Right.
time goes on. This is going to pretty much inflate our national debt to 1.4 trillion dollars more
Yeah.
than what it is now. This is not like it's going to 1.4 trillion. It's going to gain 1.4 trillion dollars in debt. Um, and it may be more depending on whether or not certain things have to be done to keep the tax brackets for certain people down. So it could be more than 1.4 trillion dollars.
Right.
What they're saying is the way to keep it lean would be to get rid of uh, certain tax breaks for lower tax brackets, which means anybody below the tax brackets, below the higher tax brackets, will pay more taxes on top of that debt. So to get rid of that debt, pretty much, basically, the poor people are going to pay for the debt if it fucking doesn't hold to 1.4 trillion dollars.
Yeah, and like I said, I'd seen when I said people were celebrating that fact that I didn't mean like politicians. I mean I saw regular people bragging about these temporary tax breaks, and I felt so short-sighted in the grand scheme.
Exactly.
Just I, when I heard that, I was not consoled at all. This is a problem in the long term, and by long term, I mean just a few years from now, not even 50 or 100 years from now.
Yeah, no. Short term, you get a couple of years where you're going to save. I think it maxes out at about 3.5% at the most. You're going to save that, but after that, fucking the shit reverses itself. So it's like, okay, for the next 3 years, I may not pay as much in taxes. Mind you, they're getting rid of certain tax breaks. So things that usually got to help lower your tax bracket will suddenly kick back in, like the healthcare tax. They're going to get rid of that, which means that since there's no incentive for insurance companies to provide this stuff so that they can get a tax benefit, and you're not going to get it as well, they can raise the prices to whatever the fuck they want, because there's no incentive for them not to charge you more now, which is going to balloon ACA, which means that ACA is going to look ugly, which is a very subversive way of getting rid of the Affordable Care Act, because now you're going to make it seem like it's more unpleasant than it actually is, and therefore you're going to make it more appealing to vote it out instead of trying to fix the problems that are already in place and making it a better system. So you got that to look forward to in a couple of years as well. Probably faster, because I think after the first year, it's going to just fall apart. So they're going to pretty much get rid of ACA without really having to try. They just basically subverted it.
Here's to them, I guess. I said, here's
Yeah.
to them, motherfuckers. One way or another, they're getting what they want, I guess.
Yeah, so, and of course, 2018 is a pivotal election year. There could be some significant changes. So, yeah, it's a slim chance that something could happen to reverse. It's gonna be hard though, because the House is where it's gonna be the hardest, because there's a huge uphill battle in the House, whereas in the Senate, it's like just that close. They can flip that pretty easy in comparison.
I mean, once they do this, can we at least stop pretending this stuff helps the middle class? I mean, some politicians do it sort of subtly, suggest that this helps the lower middle class. We saw Trump probably a couple of weeks ago now out there like, this isn't going to help me and, the rich people. This is going to help all those lower middle class people. I'm like, what the fuck? Come on. Why do we have to keep pretending that this is true?
Because we're the people who vote, and we're the people who will pay the majority of the taxes. So they got to ram it down our throats and make it easier to swallow, because if they don't, and we are short-sighted because a lot of people, like you said, are happy about it, of course, because they're looking at, okay, good, I don't have to pay more tax and I'll get a bigger refund. Okay, so you get that bigger refund for a year or two, and then when that whole thing kicks in, you're like, what the fuck? And then you're back to, they're screwing me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we don't see the long game, and they don't either. I mean, they see the long game for certain people, but not for the whole, and that's the problem. Like we don't see it, where they're going. So it's easy to trick us. Again, it goes back to the whole education thing and people's interests in politics. Nobody really fucking pays enough attention.
Something that bothers me is the people who, you know, a lot of people are happy about the probably bigger tax refunds that they're going to get, but the people I saw really embracing this idea from this Trump administration were, you know, those cynics who are always like trying to break everything apart. Like they seem weirdly in love with this idea, which I can only assume is because it was a Republican idea and it came out of the right. There was this weird double standard the way they looked at this thing. If this type of thing had come from like the left, I'm sure they would have shared shit tons of articles to tear this down. There is among people on the right and like libertarian parties too much happiness around this thing that is politically biased, I think.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And I just saw a tweet from Joy Reid. Boo. Senator Graham. No, Senator Graham and others met today to discuss how to bring Obamacare repeal bill back in 2018. So, yeah, they're going to keep pounding away. They're persistent. They need to have total fucking control of the things, and it's not stuff that's going to benefit their constituency. That's the funny part about it. Like, out of all of this, I guess because I don't know. It really doesn't. I can't fathom how people vote for them. No, it's not even about being Republican. They're shitty people who are doing shitty things.
I don't know what to tell you there. Because I mean, you know, the reason I made that distinction between the politicians and regular people is because I can at least understand why those.
Hold on 1 second.
Right. Well, this guy, Mr. Megas, decided to leave us. Not a very Christmassy guy, is he? But and he even turned off his camera. I don't know what kind of insidious things he's doing back there. For the record, anybody who was offended by my Kwanzaa comments, does really just a general question. I've never met anybody who celebrates Kwanzaa before, and I'm culturally interested to see how that is done. Didn't realize you guys didn't get presents. That's kind of sad. Should be boosting our economy with purchases and shit. Yep. Let's see.
Okay, since I don't feel like restarting this thing over again, we're just gonna have to deal with the weird interruptions. Sorry, people.
Could you give me a based on how long you're going to be gone? I wasn't sure if I should like talk a bunch or sit quietly and awkwardly.
That was crazy. Yes, that was very awkward, and apologize. No, somebody apparently said they text me, which I didn't get a text, and that they're coming through.
They're rude.
And his phone messes up, so it may not have gone through because I don't see it.
Unacceptable.
Yeah, it's like, come on, dude. It's fine.
So is he just sitting behind the green screen right now? Like, is he?
Yeah, I know. And you guys are probably like, oh my God, this is 2-minute pause for no reason. And you heard a door knock and all that. So apologies, but you have to deal with the jank today.
Well, On that note, I don't even remember what the fuck I was talking about.
We were talking about the tax bill.
Yes. All right. You had asked. You had mentioned that this isn't going to benefit the Republicans' constituents, and asking how they could vote for this type of thing. I just don't have a good answer for that type of shit. I seriously don't understand constantly voting for them with their clearly, with their agenda that is not for them. It's for the rich, essentially. It's blatantly for the rich. And I can't extremely blame them, I guess. But, at least among the rich, I understand supporting it. I don't understand it with lower middle class people. It's not for you. It doesn't help you, at least not in the long term. I wonder if, after we get these next couple tax refunds that might be a little bigger, if, after that come back down again, if that will help piss people off enough to change their votes. I doubt it, but
Yeah, and it's funny because this kind of leads into the topic that I wanted to get into later with conspiracy. I'm going to go over the other two big things that happened, and then we'll lead in that. But it's like when you hear people, like regular working class people, talk about the two parties and those who support Republicans, they're always saying, it's a conspiracy like excuse about how the liberals are just trying to take everything away from them, take away their rights, their freedoms, and make them do things like, that they don't want to. They want to tax them more. All the liberals care about is taxing people more, like stuff like that. Like, no, that's actually not true. They're not trying to do that. But it's always that's the running talk. It's just like with the Sir, what's her name? Sir Sanders Huckabee, Sir Huckabee Sanders, whatever that troll's name is. She tried to troll people by saying, "Oh, Democrats aren't voting for this. What a shock! I guess they don't want you guys to have tax rates, huh?" Like, really?
We are in a depressing place here. I I wonder to what extent she believes all of this because she just seems like she's just dead inside for having to spout all this nonsense. I mean, maybe I'm just projecting that thought onto her, like giving her too much credit because I like to think that she knows that this is all bullshit, but maybe she's getting paid a lot, so she's just like stuffing down that resentment and spitting it out.
I couldn't do that. I mean, I have a hard enough time doing some things that I do, as an adult, like certain things at work you sometimes don't want to do. Paying bills, I definitely don't want to do that. But I won't go to a point where I will give up my goddamn soul. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to, I guess maybe that's the thing, the key to being one of these people is that you have to check your soul or just be devoid of any type of human emotion and compassion or something.
I think some of them are truly cynically trying to, gain, like Mitch McConnell. I think he's just always like that. He's always trying to game the system. I think others are just kind of infected by idiocy, where they spend too much time around the Trumpiness and other such things, or maybe they are just crazy. They have to defend it, so they just start saying crazy shit to try to defend crazy shit. I just think some of them are just like that. Like they're just evil, vile, manipulative people. Some of them are. Again, I would argue that McConnell is, but I think some of them are just getting swept away in this wave of madness that's going over the country.
Yeah, I don't.
Maybe that's too kind of an interpretation, but
yeah, I honestly don't get it because it's like even when you crunch numbers. I mean, again, when they crunch the numbers and they said that this is going to raise the debt, it's like, okay, well, who's going to pay for that debt? We are. So this is, like I said, in a sense, this is a short-term solution to a bigger problem that's going to be coming, rearing its ugly head. But of course, they're going to blame the Democrats because all it takes is for a Democrat to be in office to have to make that decision. And it's gonna fuck them because people are like, oh, you Democrats just want to raise taxes. It's like, well, you got to pay for running this country. You got to pay your bill. Even the country has to pay its bills, and taxes are the way that they pay bills. That's why they raised the tax liability on people above $250,000, so they wouldn't have to raise it for people underneath who's not making that much money, and try to equal it out. At least make it look like it's balanced. Because I've said this many times, and I'll say it again: if taxes are 20%, it's a lot easier for someone with $250,000 to pay 20% off of their earnings than it is for somebody who makes 25,000. 20% of 25,000, that's $5,000. That's a huge chunk. They're not going to miss that fucking 50,000 as much as somebody who would miss 5,000 who's only making 25,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is like it's not even hard. It's basic fucking arithmetic. It's not complicated math.
I don't know. I was gonna say there are people who feel like it's unfair to tax the rich more. I don't. I think the people who want like a flat tax, equal amongst all people, no matter how much you make, are not taking into account the situation. Like you said, it is more struggle, I guess, for people who make less money to have more of their money tax. You do want a more variable tax, I guess, than that. That said, these people are going to tax the poor more, so it's not even really equal in that sense, is it?
No, it's because
leaning in the wrong direction now.
Like, going back to my example, okay, so now you're down to $200,000. I'm down to $20,000. Who's more likely to reinvest their money into the economy? 9 times out of 10, it's going to be someone who makes $20,000 because they have to buy stuff. They have to be able to buy essentials, but also they want to have some luxuries too. Someone who has $200,000 a year, 9 times out of 10, the majority of their luxuries have already been bought within probably the first 5 years of making that amount of money a year. And after that, it's just all really extra shit like vacations and savings and things like that. So they're still further ahead of the game. Whereas, someone like me, if I like we were talking about you going out of town, you buying your ticket and buying all the stuff that you need for the trip is going to cost you certain things. You can't do certain things because fuck, you're not making like over $200,000 a year. And sorry to tell everybody's financial racket,
broke the shit.
But it's like that. It's like, come on, you know what I mean? It makes more sense to give the lower levels the breaks and to give them the cake. Just like, while I'm mad that it only took him that to flip, I am glad that Ted Cruz did fight for the whole child tax thing to be raised. To give people a bigger tax credit for having children, because children are expensive to take care of. Like, really, really, you spend a lot of money trying to, provide for your family.
And they don't fucking work at all.
But it's like
no income. What the fuck?
Right, but it's like you get that one thing, which is cool. But what about the rest of the stuff that can benefit people? Like you cutting the teachers' funding. What? You're taking away their credit? Really? Why?
The fact that we can look at that happen and not be disgusted, or at least a large portion of us won't be disgusted, is very depressing. A little bit ago you mentioned this fear of the elite on the left side, always trying to control everything, control our guns, control our this, that, people on the right feel. I look at this tax issue and I'm like, why don't you feel that this is the elite fucking with you now? This is literally the rich and powerful with showing off their disdain for the poor in many ways, sometimes explicitly saying, I don't remember who the fuck that guy was that mentioned it, but saying a lot of the reason people can't pay for stuff is because they're wasting money on phones and movies and shit like that.
Right.
This lack of interest in how this type of taxing hurts the poor, only wanting to help businesses. Is this not the elite with a serious disdain for the non-elite poor people. What's the difference here?
Yeah,
Why,
real quick,
why are you bothered by that?
let me just go over the other two things that were major. Of course, we know net neutrality was repealed. There still is a fight. They are going to court. Many states are trying to develop their own net neutrality laws to help stem the tide. So hopefully that will work out. And what was the third thing? I just forgot about it because I'm like thinking about this whole tax thing and the whole conspiracy formula they put behind getting things like this bad. Third major thing that happened. There was something else that happened. Jesus.
Gotta think about Doug winning.
Yeah, Doug Jones winning. Although Roy Moore is not conceding, he wants to get a recount. He's threatening to pay for it if the count on the 22nd doesn't turn in his favor. It'll be interesting because he did lose by almost 2%. So it's a good chance that he's not going to have any hope. Side note in elections, reason why you should vote, people, today in Virginia State House, an election between a Republican and a Democrat, where the Republican originally was announced the winner. They did a recount, and lo and behold, the Democrat actually won by one fucking vote. So if they do certify this after tomorrow, he will be the delegate for the state of Virginia, and that will make a 50-50 split in the Virginia State House, which means that Republicans can't just have their way out there anymore. They're pretty much in lockstep, and everybody has to come to a serious agreement in that state. Plus, with the Democratic governor, and it ain't looking good for Republicans in Virginia. So that slim little advantage they had in the state house before is totally gone. Now it's an even playing field, but people go out there and vote because who knows how much you can change things. I mean, one fucking vote changed the whole entire scope of the political scene in Virginia. So
I feel bad for that dude. That, like, as cool as it must be to win by one vote, like, it must kill you sad to lose by one vote. Like, I feel bad for that motherfucker.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it would tear at me, but it probably would tear at me less.
Really, I think it would bother me more because
no.
It's like when you're running and you trip at the finish line or something. Like, those, it feels like the closer you get to victory, to have it snatched away, it hurts more.
No, it's not that one vote that was like it was like at least like this shows that I have a chance if I try again. The thing that bothers me is the way it went down. It's like I won. It's like, you know, I know you don't watch football. For all you football fans, it is literally the equivalent of that fucking New England Patriots Pittsburgh Steelers game where the guy caught the pass and stretched it over the goal line for a touchdown. But when he fell on the ground, the ball came out of his hands. Most people say rule of thumb, ball crosses the line, it's a touchdown, regardless. Nope. They said that since what was the stupid excuse? The catch didn't survive the ground, quote unquote. So it nullified the catch. Steelers threw an interception next play and lost the game. It's like that. It's like to go from like, yes, I just won, to somebody saying, oh, my bad. You know, he got Steve Harvey.
So I don't follow sports, but even I heard that shit happen. Like, there was quite a ruckus.
It's fucking dumb. He caught that ball. That was a touchdown. They got cheated, but
I didn't see it. I can't say shit, but man, like, that must have been a big deal because, like, even out in my bubble over here in the non-sports world, I still heard about it.
Yeah, it was fucking ridiculous. I hated it.
But
everybody hated it.
But
those were the biggest things.
Like I said, those guys are persistent as fuck, and you can accuse him of being a lot of things, but a quitter is not one. On that net neutrality thing, you know, same as with the tax thing, there are people acting like there's this big silver lining to these spots. I remember somebody, I'd like to think that they were joking, but not really. They said something like, positive side to net neutrality thing is kids will have to get off the computer and start talking to people more. And then, like, a stream of, like, people above 30 or some shit were like, yeah, I grew up in whatever, we didn't have computers, I had to talk to people face to face. And I think it's decent, I guess, to try to find the positive in situations, but sometimes it's just like, I don't even know what to say about it. It's fucking.
That is the most asinine thing I ever heard of. Um, so it's not like the option to go outside has never been there. People are just more sedentary. I mean, people, period. And you're saying kids, fucking, like, I'm 42. Fuck, I want to go outside for. I got Netflix. I can chill. Myself, unfortunately, but fuck it. I got Netflix. I got my fucking streaming TV services. I got fucking this goddamn podcast to do. I'm talking to a human being right now on this podcast. And other human beings are watching and interacting in comments when they want to. I understand the whole there's a wall between people because people aren't physically interacting as much anymore, but people are still interacting with each other. In fact, you can make the argument that the internet has made you more interactive and more astute to things around the world, not just your little space. Like I can speak to someone. I used to do a podcast with a guy from Australia. I've spoken to many people from England through these things. You know, I know someone in Africa. It's not like people are disconnected. Sure, the physical time, but when people want to spend physical time with each other, they get up, they get off their ass, and they go. I mean, we still have social areas, school, work, downtime, because not everybody wants to just sit on the computer. That's the dumbest. That's one of those things. It's like, yeah, I understand people do utilize the internet and the computers more and don't go out physically as much, but it still happens.
Yeah. I've experienced similar things, you know, talking to people around the world through gaming mostly. You know, as somebody in technology, I might be a bit biased. There's this weird disdain for technology, this notion that it's ruining sociality between people, I guess. And like you said, it's not true. It's just socialness moved into a different arena. You do it in a different way. There's more options. Yes, we could probably stand to put our phones down a little bit more and talk physically, but I think a lot of these people are over romanticizing the telecommunications past and not appreciating the benefits we have now. And, you know, main point on that was, you know, this idea, same with the tax bill. There's these people who are looking at something shitty and then acting like, well, there's two sides to every story. There's good shit too. You're stretching for some of the good shit, first of all. It's not equal good shit. Like, yes, there's always a silver lining even to a fucking mushroom cloud after an explosion, but it's still mostly bad.
Yeah, no, remember, I mean, I wonder if people remember the days that there were days when there were no telephones, where people had to communicate by sending mail by actually, go back to when there weren't no trains and you had to send people on horseback across the country to deliver a letter to correspond with family that didn't live in the same town, let alone state. Right. But the telegraph and eventually the telephone made it so, you know, you can contact your relatives that are further away and that you can be more involved in their lives. Technology actually benefits you when it comes to human personal communication. I mean, again, we're on this podcast looking at each other face to face. There was a time where the phone was all you could do, and all you could do is hear somebody's voice. Now, if your son is over in Iraq serving in the military, you can video chat with him and you could see this person physically and interact with them and have a conversation. So I don't, it's like, yeah, sure. Of course we're more tied into technology, but that generally happens with each evolution of technology.
I feel like I might have touched on this in a paper in college or something, but I can't remember. But I think some of the issue with that is like the image you see, like you see a person, you know, looking down. I shouldn't say that because my backyard's there. You know, looking down at their phone, and you just kind of, you have no idea what they're doing, but you have like this bad sort of idea about it, like they're just being lazy, they're not talking to people, blah blah blah. Or the same thing when somebody's just sitting at a computer. But I remember when I was younger and phones were starting to become more popular, teenage girls were getting made fun of a lot for texting. It's weird that people kept saying that they're not being social when it's like it's almost that you're being too social because you're texting like 10 people at once. I remember there were times where I was like instant messaging like 5 people at the same time, and somebody actually accused me of not being social while I was doing that. Uh, you know, somebody looked at me like looking at my phone and criticized me when really what I was doing at the time was reading a book. And I remember thinking, if I was just holding a physical book right now, you wouldn't be running your fucking mouth about this. It's because it's on a phone that it's bothering you. You have no idea what the person's doing on that phone, but it's a phone, a piece of technology, so it bugs you.
Yeah, because they could be fucking reading. You can read books on your phone. It's funny because as someone who's considered an introvert, and I'm proud of it, and someone who's been around, sadly, long enough to remember when there were no cell phones. Hell, I can remember when there were no pagers, things like that. There was no mobile communication at all. I wasn't necessarily pining to have individual conversations in person with people I didn't know. Right. A lot of people just want to talk to the people they know. Like, I'm very nice, so I put up with a lot of things. One of the things that I feel like I put up with is interacting with people I don't know in any capacity. I don't like doing that because I'm introverted. And sometimes people will be talking about some of the damnedest things, like sitting on a train when I used to catch the train. I hate it when people would spark certain conversations and try to get you to engage just out of the blue. Like I'm sitting here, I'm minding my business, and all of a sudden you want to talk to me about, some issue that either I don't have an opinion of or I don't feel like talking about at the moment. You just randomly making conversation. And I get it. People, like to have conversations, and there's some people are that personable. I'm not one of those people. So I like having a device that gives me even a bit more easier option of just having a conversation with people who I want to, when I want to. I don't necessarily want, not everybody, even back then, people still would have their heads down with a book, without a book, whatever, right, and not trying to talk to people. It's not like it's something that's been revolutionary in society that people just don't want to talk to somebody else in person. It's always happened.
That's a very good point. Every once in a while I'll like throw out a book as a suggestion for you guys. What I'm listening to right now, I listen to audiobook because technology's fucking great and I can do that. It's called Fantasyland: How America Went Haywire, a 500-year history by Kurt Anderson. And one of the things I'm constantly shocked by as he's going through all of this history is, we see a lot of these habits that we have now that we assume sprung up recently, like not wanting to talk to people. People think that sprung up recently, and technology sprung up recently, so it must be technology's fault. As Black saying, that's not necessarily the case. It could have always been there. You're just not taking into account the real historical context there. Like looking through this book, it's really fascinating to see how early some of the habits that we think are modern started to show up. Some of them decades ago, like in the 60s, some of them from the country's conception and before. I think people get too hung up on wanting to shit on the present and always assume that everything about the present that's wrong started in the present, like within the last 10 years or so. Not that not wanting to talk to motherfuckers is wrong, but you get my point. Like,
yeah,
we're so intent on shitting on modern stuff that we don't really remember the past correctly. It was like that in many cases. Technology isn't fucking everything up. It has its flaws, but some things are just part of human nature, or at least have been part of our culture for a while. It's not just cell phones coming out of nowhere ruining your life. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, it's like you saying people not wanting to talk to people is wrong. I mean, there have been people throughout history who just don't want to talk to people. Whereas, like in my case, it's not that I don't want to talk to people. I am very private. I'm a closed person. I only talk to people who I'm comfortable with or I'm familiar with. I do engage from time to time with people, but that's on my own choice. Sometimes people just don't always want to do that, you know? Even somebody who's the most, friendliest social person don't actually want to talk sometimes. Or don't want to be bothered sometimes. You know,
Not in the same way.
it's yeah, but it's like, yeah, I know people like who just don't want to be bothered, even though they'll talk to and be friendly to everybody. They just sometimes you just want a moment by yourself, and you might come up and try to start a conversation. They just don't feel like doing it at the time. It's natural. It's a human thing. It's not like but it's always been there. People have conspired to make this whole thing. It's just like I go back to how I used to talk to you about how I feel like people. What was the thing we were talking about? How people with the internet seem to just do certain things that drive me crazy. At the end of the day, I'm pretty sure, like you've told me many times, it's always existed in some form. Just like that part of the book that you sent me about religion and how, even though people may not believe in the major religions, there's something that they have a religious, like, affinity to, which is true. It's just like we act like things are brand new, like people not being as religious is all of a sudden a new concept. But people have not always been devout in their religion. It's not like it's, again, look at some of the early stories in the Bible. There were religious things that existed before then that people ignored. There was stuff after the Bible that people still ignore. I mean, I've had discussions with you about the King James Bible and King Charlemagne and how they ignored things to do certain things, or they interpret it. It's just what we do, but people make it like it's all of a sudden like this is something that wasn't inherited, but was invented.
Like recently. And, in fairness, I think that's a good example of where I did the same thing of assuming that something is more recent or new. As an atheist, I get a little concerned by people leaving religions, saying they're not religious anymore and really just picking up New Age and mysticism, essentially, belief in random energies and mystical rocks and shit. And I really thought that was a pretty recent thing, but he's going over the history of this shit, and it's been something that's been evolving for decades and decades, probably a little bit longer. It depends on where you really, in history, you think that really started to spring up, but it's been around for at least since like the 60s, at least. He talked about this particular American sort of, taking the religion and making it your own thing. Part of the reason that it started branching off a lot in the United States. So this issue with people breaking away from traditional religions and starting up more magical, what I think of as nonsense, has been a problem for us almost since the beginning, I would say.
Yeah,
he picked out a specific woman who I'll have to look up, but he traced it back to her as being the first person to start doing this shit. It's not new at all.
No, I would say it's further, because remember we had that whole conversation about how there's different divinities of Christianity. That's kind of an example of that, where people decided, you know what, I like being a Christian, but I want to do it my way. So they started to branch into these different ideas of what being a Christian is, Lutheran, Protestant, Presbyterian, Roman Catholic, which I find really weird that there's Roman Catholic and Catholic. But, just all like it just splits. It's like people have been making their way, like making things the way they want it to forever. And then we go back and try to like say like, oh, people are just hating religion. It's like, no.
Yeah, they have. A part of his argument was that there's specific things about the American culture that, took that idea of people wanting to branch off and kind of threw it into overdrive. But I can bring it more up when we talk about the conspiracy stuff, because I think it ties into there.
Oh, no, let's go ahead and get into it.
Well, I think, part of his argument was that as part of our culture, we started to really grasp onto this whole idea that, what I believe is what I believe and what you believe is what you believe. We all have our own bullshit. Nothing is more or less valid than anything else. And it really took root in this country a lot, which seemed to spawn a lot of people really taking the religion into their own hands. You know, there were prior to that splitting and stuff, but that usually was accompanied with like fighting in a war and stuff. It wasn't
It usually was some major event and
right.
that
It,
started.
yes, it was more of a group sort of shift. Where it is in America, it started to become we're very individual focused, so we started to just take shit and roll with it like that. Like, if I don't like this anymore, fuck it, I'm gonna start branching off over here. Our American culture seems to really allow us to just spawn off onto any random bullshit we want. Because again, for a lot of us, it's I believe what I believe. We all have our own opinion, and for some reason, all opinions are equal. There's no clear line between facts and opinions anymore. Uh, I can't go through the whole book because it's a bit long and comprehensive. I do recommend it. Maybe I'll slap a link down in the comments later. But yeah, it's this very interesting. I guess I'll call it a theory he has on the unique nature of American exceptionalism, which is a good term to use for that. But what did you want to touch on with this?
No, just like, I mean, stuff like this. How, again, we talked about the whole left versus right way of seeing things. Whereas it generally seems like the left will say, they're screwing you because this and this shows that this happens. Whereas the right wing is, well, they want to take it away from you. How do they want to take it away? They just do. Can't you see? They're doing what they're doing is it's it sounds like I'm beating up on the right, but a lot of that stuff, like the whole, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, they don't want to help you out type of thing. It's like it's never really based on fact. Conspiracies to me are funny because I always look at conspiracies as it's something that seems viable to people because it has just like this tiny thread that's 100% right. Just like if you say, oh, well, you saw Jimmy Carter back in the day raise taxes. Yeah, he did raise taxes because there was a financial crisis and there needed something to be done. He wasn't doing it to hurt people. He was doing it to save this country because we had the gas shortage and all these things. So raise taxes a little bit, steady the market, and then go from there. And he said it. It wasn't like he didn't say why he was doing this. He said it. But the running through line that got him kicked out of office was he raised taxes. We had a deficit, which wasn't by his causing. This thing started before he got in there, but it was all a conspiracy. This is what Democrats do. This is what he did to you. This is how they operate. This is why you need to vote for Reagan, because we, as Republicans, will fix the things that they're doing to you. When it wasn't like he was doing anything to them. He inherited a mess. He did what he needed to try to fix it, but it all of a sudden developed into this whole, he's just trying to fuck people with taxes. And it's funny how since then taxes has been kind of their running go-to conspiracy. I feel like it's always about taxes. Taxes. Every time I remember when Bush Sr. ran, he tried to scare the shit out of people because Bill Clinton was going to raise your taxes, and Bill Clinton didn't care about family. Those were the two fucking like major points that he ran on. When he won his election, what was the first thing that came out of fucking Bush Senior's mouth? He did that famous speech where he went, "No more taxes." What happened? The budget started to fall. We started to slip into recession. He raised fucking taxes. He raised fucking taxes. But it'll always kind of be pinned on Clinton because he did it before he went out of office. So right. It's like, okay, you left me with this. It's like, yeah, well, it's not like you did the wrong thing because you needed to stabilize the economy and hope, but it just all of a sudden became like, see, this is what Democrats do. We're like, no, the Republican did that. But it's always been that like rallying point for Republicans that all Democrats do is raise taxes. And I don't know how that has become a like concrete conspiracy because again, I just gave you an example of a Republican raising taxes. So
God, part of that is just this idea, they don't want to be taxed. As far as taxing the rich, they want to keep their money and stuff. But part of it is also, I think, not understanding that we need to have taxes in general. You have a lot of people who are like, they shouldn't be taxing us. I made my money. It's my money. We shouldn't be doing that. They don't seem to understand and appreciate that we live in this country together. And part of the contract of us being able to survive and live together and prosper is having taxes to use for money on shit, like in some ways, public education, infrastructure. We're not using it on healthcare or anything cool, but taxes are there for a reason. There's this huge disdain for the idea of the government coming and taking your money away. I think maybe this is a failure in school. Maybe we should, as a culture, have a better understanding of the necessity and use of taxes. Like when I see that there's taxes on my, bank stuff, I'm not that bothered by it. I acknowledge that as part of living in a country and helping other people. I wish some of that tax would go toward other stuff like free education and healthcare for, obviously not me because I've graduated, but for younger people, I would like it to go toward more useful shit like that. But I think there's this huge hatred of the idea of somebody, a huge government entity coming and taking your money away because there's no real appreciation of what tax is for or why. It's an idea. It isn't the worst thing on earth. And I'm sure Republicans are more on board with that, not just because they want to keep their money and be rich, but they want small government in general. They hate the idea of government coming and telling you, how to manage your money, what to do with your money, taking your money, shit like that. I think there's just a lack of appreciation of the need and use of that.
yeah, because I've always said that I don't mind paying more taxes, but it's always been with the caveat that as long as it goes to the right things, and that would be my only issue with taxes, that this country doesn't utilize its taxes efficiently enough. They're always taken from places like health care, from education, from, he got rid of the money that was allocated to human arts and things like that, which is kind of a part of education too, and all of that. And it's just like, okay, so what do you want to do? Spend more on military. Okay, we have
more.
Yeah, it's like we have enough. As far as I can see, we have plenty of weapons and means to defend ourselves. So why do you keep resurging more money into this money pit? And it's just like, well, of course, that's because a lot of large businesses in this country, probably you could say some of the more lucrative companies in the United States, have military base interests, and they do a lot of business with the military. Therefore, keep them happy by giving them more money to run through. And it's just like, that makes no sense. There should be free. I mean, we always talk about how this is the greatest country on earth and it's the richest country, and we always like to throw all of these nice fancy terms to describe how awesome we are. But there are lesser countries that have free healthcare, that have free education. Like people can go to college for free in some cases, or they can at least get better funding and not get hit so hard with debt after they leave college, things like that. But we don't covet those things. We don't want to make people smarter. We don't want to keep our workforce healthy. We want to pretty much, starve them to death financially, and keep people dumb. And keep a system in place where, like, now with all these rollbacks of ACA, people are going to be worse off, and it's tough. It's like you have to make the decision between your life and paying a bill that you can't afford.
Right. And to your point you made earlier, where you said you wish the taxes were used on better things and more efficiently. I think interestingly, we agree with people some people on the right, especially libertarians. I think that maybe the government isn't spending money wisely. I think we can agree on that, but I think the solution to that should be making them spend it on better shit. We should have more value for education and healthcare. But so a lot of people's thoughts on the idea that the government isn't using the money we give them properly is, well, let's just stop giving them money. I'm just going to keep my money. I'm a better judge of what to do with it than you are. There's some people who, for example, when talking about things like healthcare, will say that we shouldn't give it to the government to take care of it anyway. We should just charitably give, and you should, as an individual, choose to give to healthcare. I have reasons to think that that's not the way you want to go, that I won't delve into here. It's a bit of a conversation, but a lot of them just don't feel, they just feel this huge disdain for this overarching mechanism reaching down and pulling your money away and then wasting it. And their whole solution is to stop allowing that mechanism to take it away instead of making the mechanism stop wasting it. But I feel like I was going to say something more about the conspiracy portion of that, but then I forgot where I was going. Oh, God.
No, but it's just very, very strange to me how people buy into that idea. It's just other things. Like I remember we were having a conversation earlier this week about this argument I got into somebody, and he was saying how like the best way to fix the problem with net neutrality is to get rid of lobbyists, because that's one of the reasons why it happened. And it's like, I understand getting rid of lobbyists does sound like a good idea. But as I kept thinking about it, I was like, you have to amend that to not just getting rid of lobbyists, because a lot of people forget, and this is one of those conspiracy theories that and Band-Aid solutions to things that I really hate, because a lot of people think get rid of lobbyists, you get rid of problems in politics. Lobbyists are the reason why a lot of politicians do what they do. And like I told the person, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, but isn't it a better idea to get better people who do better things in office? Because one, lobbyists, it was set up for a reason. It was kind of part of the reason is they set up the lobby system so that you can have on the books a list of all the people who are out there offering money to politicians for special causes. That's why we know who gets what from who in elections. Because before there was no such thing. It was just like, if I wanted to, like, say you were running for office, if I wanted to slide you $10,000 on the low, no one would know that you were getting funded by me to run campaign ads. All they know is like, damn, Cardiac has a lot of money to run his campaign, whereas his candidate doesn't seem to be getting a lot of money. Where's his money coming from? Is he rich? Things like that. People left to wonder and speculate, and people could deny, no, I'm not helping. I could say I'm not helping him. You can't prove that. But with the lobby system, you have to account for all that money, so you know which companies they're talking to, who I guess if you want to say they're in their pocket, whose pocket they're in, so to speak. So just getting rid of the lobby system isn't going to necessarily solve it, because campaigns cost money. People have to finance their campaigns. They're not going to do it all out of pocket. I don't care what y'all think. Bernie wasn't financing his whole campaign by himself or through private donations. It sounds like a nice romantic story, but because he's so nice, we weren't paying attention to the fact that 9 times out of 10, he probably did get money. Because I always go back to the whole conversation he had with the reporter where the guy asked him, well, what if you do win the DNC? A lot of that money that they have is given by lobbyists and private interests. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to use it? And he was like, well, we'll just have to discuss that if I win. And this is like, he just basically soft shoed and skirted around this damn question, which to me said, yeah, I'm going to use it because I need it, but I can't say this because I've come out and put my foot in my mouth by saying that I will never take any special interest money, which it's impossible unless you are a rich candidate who is willing to bet the farm with your money. You're going to need help. You're going to need help for some of those special interests, which not all of them, not all lobbyists are bad. There are some like really reputable. I was looking through the list the other day, and there were some things for different charities and different like special interests, quote unquote, such as racial equality and civil rights and all that. It's like, it's not like the a whole of lobbyists are horrible. It's just that there are some with more money who get a lot more attention from people who are willing to take that money, you know?
Right.
So
it seems like those types of people's solution to problems are always tear it down, tear down the establishment, this extreme oversimplified approach to doing things. You feel like the government is fucking with taxes. Fuck the government. Don't let them take taxes. You feel like lobbyists are a problem. Just destroy the entire lobbyist thing. You don't like the government using or the way the healthcare system was set up. Get rid of it. Yeah, I'm talking about ACA in particular in this case. We don't like it. Get rid of it. What's the plan to replace it? Repeal first. Fuck it. We'll figure it out later. It's always just tear down whatever is there. Fuck putting something in its place, or fuck fixing what's wrong with what's there. It's just this extreme desire to rip away anything that's standing. As far as conspiracy thinking goes, I think one of the main drivers for that issue is the fact that a lot of us feel that we are experts on every subject now. We feel that every person is entitled to be an expert on politics, on healthcare, on nutrition. This goes back to what I was saying about everybody having an opinion, and for some reason, all opinions being equal. Everybody feels that they just have the expertise on everything. They have access to data, certainly, so they can just go, if they want, look up any chart or do research, which is oftentimes biased anyway. They don't trust experts in other sources. I don't know if it was you I was having this conversation with, but I remember this friend of mine on Facebook, I can't remember what the conversation was about, but he shared some random data shit, and a professor of ours that we both learned under shared some article with him. I think it was from the New York Times. And his first statement was, well, this is from the New York Times, so I'm not even going to read it. And then he just went straight to the raw data of wherever this study was pulled from. And in that moment, I realized, like, man, people are really fucking arrogant. He's acting like he's some experienced sociologist or data scientist who's used to looking at numbers like this and, being able to offer a proper interpretation. I think it was gun control, now that I think about it. Always acting like, fuck it, everybody else is biased, all the experts are wrong, the establishment is bullshit. Never believing any authority or anything, always acting like you are the most intelligent person in the room, and then going, fuck all that bias, I'm going to look right at the data. And all I can think is, you have never studied this type of thing. You're not an expert in this. Yes, you can look at the raw data and maybe it will enlighten you in some way, but why are you acting like you spent years studying nuances of gun control and the social impacts of that? Why do you think you know so much? I think Americans do that with pretty much everything across the board. Like I said, from politics to nutrition to, if you can name it, people are entitled to have an opinion on it. And you can, but they act like their opinion is that of an expert.
Yeah, because I say it all the time. As much as I talk about different things, I do not think that I know everything. And I am very much open for people proving me wrong, or at least educating me on things that I don't know. People, that's the one thing I hate about conspiracy theorists type people. Because they're very, very sure that what they believe in is the absolute truth, and there's no other way to look at it. Like, I've had people try to argue me down on certain things that sound ridiculous in a lot of ways. But as soon as I make an argument or give a comment to where that questions that, what's the first thing I always get? Oh, see, you just blind to the truth. You just don't want to. You just want to be a sheep. You want to be a slave to the system, or something like that. It's like why is that? Why does, like, the first thing when you kind of like, it's not even me rejecting what they say necessarily. Sometimes if I think it's that stupid, of course it is, but it's not necessarily me just dismissing what they say, but just questioning how sensible this might sound, because if you can, like I tell you, if you can give me a reasonable argument, I may not believe or feel the same way you do, but I would trust in it more, I guess, or maybe respect it more, because at least you are coming up with valid points. With most conspiracies, it's just this is this way because this is this, and there's nothing behind it. There's nothing, unless again, if something that seems tangible to their whole thread of truth happens, they go, "You see." It's like, you know,
Oh God.
I don't get it.
Um, I find it interesting the way they present data. I think one of the issues with arguing with people with conspiracy thinkers in general is they spend a lot more time looking into the subject than you probably do. Maybe not you, maybe you know as much as he was. But I find, when I'm talking to a conspiracy thinker about some random topic, one thing you have to remember is that they spend a lot of time digging into the truths or whatever they would say. They read a bunch of random bullshit, whether it's valid or not. They start drawing conclusions. They start connecting millions of dots in this spider web of fuckery. Um, and part of what makes it difficult to have a conversation with them is, again, you might be coming into this subject completely cold. Like, you haven't been thinking about it, or you haven't thought about it recently. You don't know every little fact about said topic. And then they start regurgitating this shit ton of, data on you that they've been collecting to kind of fortify their own thoughts on the matter. And it's kind of hard to argue with them sometimes because, again, that topic might not interest you very much. You can probably tell that what they think is nonsense or crazy or not valid, but it's hard to deal with them because they spend so much time dedicated to connecting these dots that you don't even pay attention to.
Yeah, it's very weird, and they're stubborn. It's like they don't want to be open to anything that's different than what they've fell in love with, which bothers the hell out of me. It's just like that conversation I was having. It's like that dude was so stuck on that. It's like you don't believe. It's like it's a waste of time, basically, to discuss taking litigation or creating legislation for net neutrality because it's not going to work. And it's just a waste of time. And I was making examples of different instances where that stuff worked, and he was laughing because well, it don't involve money, so how does that pertain to this? It's like the fact that it involves money or not is not necessarily the point. It's the fact that there've been issues in the past where there've been litigation and legislation used to help break this, so it can help make things better. But I think that's one of the roving things about conspiracy theorists too, because unless you give something that is specifically tied in, they don't want to hear it. And even then, they can always find a way to discredit what you're saying. It's like, again, you could tell me, I could tell you water's wet, and you could say, and it's not necessarily wet, it's this. And if you give me a compelling enough argument, I can kind of understand why you think that, at least, if not agree. With them, it's just a total dismissal. It's always like, they always blow it off with laughter and with like, you're stupid type of attitude for thinking that it's not the way that I just told you.
I had earlier I had brought religion into the conversation, and again, that's part of because like in that book Fantasyland that I'm in the middle of, it's still affecting my thoughts a bit. He's talking about all sorts of American unreason, from the religious and mystical to conspiracy thinking, and I think one commonality between those religious thinkers and these conspiracy thinkers is what you just touched on just now. You can maybe knock down a single point in their web of mystery, but it's just one point, and they can always reconnect it to something else. There's no it's very hard to convince them that their idea is crazy, because even if you can knock down one specific thing, they can always reassemble to fit around that fact. It doesn't. There's no way to knock down the entire spider web. You know, a lot of us spend time trying to like clip one part of it at a time, but the entire thing is still hanging there, and they're just connecting the dots elsewhere. Even if you do, same thing with mysticism, religious shit. One thing he was touching on was those people throughout history who started trying to predict the end of the world at different dates. And every time that date would come around, they were like, oh, we must have fucked up the calculations. Oh, it's still coming, just some other time. The same thing with these conspiracy thinkers. Like, even if some part of what they think gets proven wrong, they just readjust. It doesn't really seem to affect them very much, which makes it very difficult to have a conversation with them that's productive at all. Because to whatever extent they are open to other opinions, they just swallow it up, spin around, and then they're fine again.
Yeah, I feel like it's all about directing the path towards their way,
Right.
instead of necessarily actually trying to come to a consensus.
And you talked about, him laughing. And I always say I know a lot, that you know a lot. That's like my verbal fuck up there. I'm like those people that say like a lot. I say you know a lot. So get used to that. Those people tend to be very arrogant. It goes back to what I was saying about everybody feeling that they're an expert on any subject matter ever. It makes it easy for them to laugh off everybody else, or think of everybody else as like sheep, and they're the special one that has broken away from the mind-controlled lot of the rest of us. Because I do see what you mean. They do seem very arrogant in a lot of ways, or see themselves as particularly special. They're one of the select few that see through all the bullshit, while the rest of us are still eating it up.
Yeah, it's like we're the blind ones. We're like it's just like going back to the whole blowing everything up. You can't blow everything up. Reality is, when certain things are established, it's not as easy. Again, like I like to call it, the Band-Aid solution. You can't just rip it off and start it over again, slap another one on there, and it's bam, voila. Certain things have been in motion for a lot of time, a lot of years, that structurally you got to break down over time, that you have to work on, that you have to modify. It's just like, certain things that we do. It's just as simple as traffic laws, using red, yellow, and green. Okay, you think that's ineffective. What's the replacement for that? Just don't use red, yellow, and green and have people moderate themselves. Okay, how are you going to teach people how to moderate and judge traffic and be responsible and be, respectful, pleasant, and also considerate of the other drivers on the road? Like with the Republicans, you're going to give me that, we'll come to that when it's time. No, you need a specific replacement, a viable solution to that problem.
Their offense, their solution is just getting rid of shit, but or their proposed solution, I would not call it a solution. The way they approach certain things, they don't seem to take into account the way things are. I can't remember where I heard the analogy, but it's like, you're a chess player and you're playing a game of chess, and you have to look at the board the way it is, not the way you wish it would have been several moves back. You see, let's go with healthcare, the ACA thing, for example, or Obamacare, because he cares so much. A lot of people say that we should never have done that. That system shouldn't have existed. Fine. Let's say it shouldn't have existed. That doesn't mean you can just tear it down now. The fact is, it exists now, and there are people who depend on it now. You cannot just say it should not have existed, and therefore we will just take it away. The board has changed. The chessboard is in a certain state right now. You cannot reverse 8 moves and then start making your decisions from there.
It's funny that you use the chess thing, because I use that analogy, and he decided to use that for the whole reason why getting rid of lobbyists would be the thing that would work. And like he tried to hit me with that at the end. See, it's chess, not checkers. And I'm like, nothing that you said makes fucking sense. You just told me using litigation and all that is a waste and all of this stuff, which are chess moves. And it's like all you gotta do is get this and it's over. And I'm like, well, yeah, the goal is to get the king and the queen, but you don't just walk it up there. You know, you can't just jump with you can't just use just, you know, big pieces on the board and fix everything. You have to go through the whole entire set to get to your goal. So you use everything to your disposal. Right. To get to it's like I don't really fucking get like why.
I think I heard the analogy when they were talking about warfare or something. It was a criticism of how we handled, I don't know, some sort of global issue. I can't remember which one it was now, where they were like, you know, a lot of us felt like we shouldn't have interfered. It might have been like pulling troops back or something.
That was recently it was Idi Amin, and the whole thing in Libya where people are now treating people as slaves, and they were saying Obama should have never went in there. That was one of the more recent ones.
It might have been. I feel like I heard it a little while before, but it might still be related to that. But yeah, you know, you talk about, well, we shouldn't have gone in there, so let's just pull everybody back and not deal with it. Well, we did, and we are there. The state of the board is different. You cannot act as though we didn't. You have to take the entire historical context into account, not just a small portion of what you wish it was.
Yeah, because 2020 is hindsight.
Yes. Fuck. On the note of conspiracy,
I mean, hindsight is 2020. I said that reverse.
I didn't notice, so it didn't matter. So we're both fucking dumb. On the note of conspiracy thinking,
but you know what it means. It was supposed to mean, yeah, like we all can go back and look at things and like this should have been that way. Mm-hmm. But like you said, once it's done, instead of looking back and saying that it was, I mean, you could say that, but at the end of the day, what do we do now to move forward?
I would be far more receptive to the idea of getting rid of Obamacare, if you know that's what people want to call it, which I never had a problem with that name personally. Whatever. Be more receptive to that if your solution wasn't just fuck it, throw it in the garbage. I think a lot of people would be more receptive if they had presented a viable replacement plan. Many people were like, fine, you keep running your mouths about replacing it. What do you got? At first, they had nothing, which was mind-boggling considering how long they'd been saying how terrible that thing is and trying to get rid of it. Absolutely mind-boggling. You know, we were talking about conspiracy thinking. It's very concerning that we have a president who really indulges in that type of shit. From prior to being president, when he's, you know, helped popularize the idea that Obama was not born an American citizen, to, I shouldn't even say just him, because this is a problem that's spreading throughout everybody. You have so many people now who think that there's this liberal conspiracy to, you know, focus on Russia so that we can get rid of him and his administration. It's becoming a more popular idea among regular people, and you're seeing it on like Fox News, for example. I'm sure maybe other smaller news organizations where they're just, I swear I saw the word coup float around the other day, where they were suggesting the FBI was plotting a coup to take over the White House or some shit like that. It might have been Fox.
Yeah, no, it was. They did kind of help foster that because they were saying how basically Mueller has it in for, you know, the White House, and it's a whole big conspiracy, and like he's helping to push Republicans out, and that's why Republicans are mad, because Republicans think that there's a conspiracy by the FBI with him under charge. It's like, you realize you're talking about a Republican appointee who's a Republican. You're trying to say a Republican is trying to ambush your president and your agenda. Mm-hmm. Like, no, the guy is a super cop. He believes in like the law the way he should, and he's acting on it. Sorry that he's doing his job.
Yes. The transition emails were illegally obtained. And you know, we talked about how popular conspiracy thinking is among regular citizens. I don't like that the president is a conspiracy thinker. From, like I said, the Obama thing to what was he said about global warming is a Chinese hoax or something like that.
Yeah,
It's absolutely idiotic reasons to suggest. You have an administration full of conspiracy thinkers and some meteor giants on the right supporting that. This is really fucking dangerous. I don't think you want to rile up the American public with this notion that the FBI is plotting a coup or some shit, or that there's this huge conspiracy from the liberal media to shit on the president and make him look bad and remove him and shit. This is spreading some very dangerous ideas. I don't want to feel like I'm living in some other fucked up country where propaganda is so rampant and effective.
yeah, and it kind of kills me when we like buy into that, because a lot of those things kind of are the reasons why people vote the way they vote, and I hate that. It's like we were talking about the Roy Moore thing when the lady came out and was like she's going to vote for him because he's a Christian Republican. And you know, again, the whole idea, Democrats are going to raise your taxes and they're going to take away your freedoms and blah 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 blah, this and that, you know, all of that stuff. So people will lean to that and they'll jump on a Republican because shit, at least Republicans are known to not want to do the evil thing, like, you know, take away my freedoms and whatnot. And it's like you have no real reason to be voting. You've taken a bunch of jargon and based your whole like philosophy behind your vote off of just that.
Yes, I mean that's dangerous, but I feel like what we're seeing with this administration is a newly terrifying, dangerous. You know, I'm trying to trick myself to stop saying you know so much. It's not going to work. These this constant shitting on the legitimacy of the media, questioning organizations like the FBI or CIA and all of them, you know, questioning their legitimacy, just spreading this conspiracy thinking and distrust all over. It's I don't know what to call it. Terrifying, dangerous, pushing us to a place we don't want to be in.
Yeah, I mean,
nothing fucking good about it. And they don't even seem to understand how bad what they're doing is. I'm talking about Fox too, not just the administration. Fox and similar news organizations.
Because the media does. I mean, I understand how people get the idea that a lot of places like CNN and MSN are biased. At the same time, I kind of don't, because generally what they do is they report what happens and then give their opinion. I do think that sometimes the news can be a little too opinionated, but at the same time, if you're having a discussion show like they do the discussion panels, that's people giving their opinion. Can you like kind of fudge it so you can have more people who feel some way than the other? Yeah, but that is a lot to me. That's more transparent than just continually throwing out these wild ideas and saying it as loud as you can. It's like they're screaming these things at the top of their lungs because the loudest voice usually gets noticed. And it's like if you say, I guess they figure if you say it loud enough and like frequent enough, people buy into it. And that's one of the things I hate about conspiracy theorists too, because they're always present with their theory. Every solution to almost every problem is, see, you wouldn't have got a Democrat, that wouldn't happen. Or see, if you would get rid of this, that wouldn't happen. It's not even something that's necessarily based on the topic. It's just that blanket excuse, reason things away because this is what Democrats want, or this is what Republicans want, or this is, you know, what happens when you do so and so. There's never any real argument towards the topic. That's why I hate fucking Fox News, because it's always like just that one like sweeping statement that covers everything. It's like that episode of South Park back in the day. Simpsons did it. You know, like everything that happened in the show, Simpsons did it first. You know, so yeah, it's like, oh yeah, you could say that maybe something similar happened on that show, but that doesn't fucking necessarily mean they invented it, type of thing, or that it's never happened with anybody else. It's just like they're just locked in.
I think the growing distrust for the media as a whole, because again, we've talked about it before, but people equating every other news organization to Fox, saying they're all equally biased, maybe just in different directions, is fuel to the fire of conspiracy thinking, because you don't have people who trust mainstream, more legitimate sources of news. So then they start looking to less credible sources, but at least they're doing their own research, right? So now we don't live in this shared space of reality and facts. We're all just going to wherever we want to go pick up shit because we don't feel like we can trust any of the news, which is part of the reason I find Trump's disdain and discrediting of them incredibly dangerous, because you're just shoving more people into this fucked up space of, I'm going to find whatever I believe in, facts or subjective reality. The news is one of the few places where you can get some sort of consistent, constant news we can all share. And he's making it, him and his administration and Fox as well, are making that less the case.
By the way, I still find it funny that this guy watches 8 hours of news, but it's fake.
And no, if you ever look at his Twitter, fake news isn't like all news. It's just news that isn't Fox that's fake. He's picking the news he likes and saying that that's real news. So he's not even across the board shitting on news like some people does. He's just shitting on anything that isn't like Fox and Friends or something.
Yeah, it's like, dude, you're making up that thing. And again, it goes to that conspiracy theorist thing, though, because it's like only what you believe is so. Nothing else matters. Like, I can show you several times where Fox has fucking lied blatantly or fucked up a story, but they're okay. Everything else fake. Like,
second tweet down the list from this Trump guy is accusing Washington Post of being fake news. He dwells on this point and a few others, but delegitimizing the news quite a bit, a frightening amount, like dictator levels of trying to discredit the news media.
Yeah, and it's just like I don't see how people close themselves off to everything. Like, how, I guess that's my other biggest problem with conspiracy theories is the tunnel vision. That bothers the fuck out of me. How can you just lock into that one thing and nothing else? Like,
I think back to us being so individualistic, like I said, you feel like you're an expert on every topic imaginable, or if you're not, you're just as qualified as anybody else to interpret any number of data the way you want, right? So, yeah, there doesn't seem to be a belief among many people that reality in general is objective. They feel like reality is a fucking Rorschach test. You look at it however you want and interpret what you want from it. And it's gone into every realm, from religion to politics to healthcare and food. Like, anything you can think of, people have their opinion and they act like it's just as good as a fact. I've said for a long time, there doesn't seem to be a line between a fact and an opinion. I used to say anymore, but I guess after reading this book, it seems like an older problem than I realized.
yeah, no, it reminds me of, I tweeted something. It was something about gaming, and it was something about how people just all like want to believe just this one thing. And someone I know tweeted back was like, well, yeah, I mean, I forget exactly what it was. Oh, it was about net neutrality. That's what it was. It wasn't necessarily gaming,
Mm.
but it was like relating to the fact that Twitch streamers love to come out and say we can't talk about politics, but when it's something that concerns them, they're quick to jump on it, like net neutrality. And he was like, well, yeah, that's because the majority of people agree. And my counterpoint was like, you know, I get that. And it's sad because it's kind of hypocritical, but he was like, well, welcome to the internet. That's how people are with the hive mind. And it's like, I understand what you're saying, but that doesn't legitimize it for you to have, like, to feel validated because you have enough people agree with something or to think that what that certain thing is, you know, is viable, that makes it right. Just like Trump with the fake news, like with enough people retweeting and agreeing with him, he thinks he's validated by believing that news is fake. And it's like some things, again, like you said, what's fact, what's fiction? Because a lot of people nowadays, to me, seem to base fact on 1,000 people agree with me, so it must be true.
Mm.
Which I don't necessarily agree. I don't.
You shouldn't. That's bullshit. I remember somebody making that argument with like the Black Lives Matter thing, where they said something like, "There's even black people that don't agree with Black Lives Matter," and they use that as an argument that it's bullshit. And I was thinking, okay, and there's white people that do, but I would never argue that because that's beside the fucking point. It's not relevant. Either this thing is objectively true or right, or it isn't. That's independent of who believes in it. If I tell you right now that 2 plus 2 equals 5, and I tell you that 90% of the population agrees with me, that doesn't make it correct. Any more than the majority of the world believing the earth was flat at one point made it flat.
I mean, it could just be y'all are just a bunch of dumbass.
Yeah. There could be a majority of people that are wrong. So, but I feel like, I don't know how it is with other countries, but I've always felt, and I felt like it was at least growing, that this line between the fact and the opinion has been continuously blurring. I remember I was having a conversation with somebody, it might have been my girlfriend at the time or something, and I had made this argument. And I tend to try to make my arguments as objective as possible, unless I'm talking about what I personally feel about something. But otherwise, I try to make them objective statements in general. At least I strive to. And whoever was said, well, that's just your opinion. And that drove me up a fucking wall because I was like, what in it was an opinion? Most of it was fact or objective based, was it not? It could have been wrong, mind you. I could have been wrong about whatever argument I was making, and I accept that. But what drove me crazy was that it seemed like no matter how I put something, you know, how much of my own emotion I tried to remove from it, how objective I put it, even if it was purely based on data or whatever, it was never taken as an objective argument. It was always, that's just the way you see the world. That's just an opinion. And it frustrated me because I was like, then what is a fact? Because I can't seem to present anything to you that you are willing to accept as either a fact or at least an objective argument. It's like all of reality is an opinion. So what would you accept as a fact? And I'm starting to think for a lot of people that means nothing now.
Yeah, I honestly think that if it doesn't sit right with them, there's no way that, like, there's a lot of things that don't sit right with me. That generally is true, but I'm not going to hold my breath until I turn blue in the face, or until you acknowledge that what I think is right. I think that's what a lot of people do, is like they're holding their breath until they pass out in order to force you into thinking how they think or believing what they believe. And it's like, it don't work like that. Life don't.
And now it's like believing is good enough. I think that's what scares me. If you believe in it, that's all you need. Period. There's no other criteria for something being valid now. It's fuck it, I believe in it. And usually when I say that, I'm talking about religion. I think that extends to politics too. This is why we keep hearing this stupid fucking trickle economics thing come back over and over and over again, no matter how many times and ways it's proven that it doesn't work.
Fucking like 40 years and more than 40 years this shit's been going on.
Yeah, but there's a quasi-religious faith in the free market that a lot of people on the right have, and they're entitled to have it because there's no real line between a fact and an opinion.
Yeah,
they're able to just keep bringing it back because
see, that to me, you would think like seeing what happened with Reagan and they blew up savings and trusts. There used to be different types of banks before. Now banks are universal, but before you had depositories, you had savings and loans. But the trickle down economics blew the fuck up out of the savings and loans. They eliminated a whole section of financial means was destroyed due to trickle down economics. We saw it. It's not like it's something that didn't happen. It's just like if I see you get punched in the face, I can't be like, he didn't get punched in the face.
Apparently you can. Reality is subjective. I mean, again, this is something we tend to talk about with religion only, and it bothers me in that realm, but we do it with everything. That's why you have people who believe vaccines cause autism, no matter what the fuck you present to them. No matter what facts you have, you could prove 6 ways to Sunday that even the original literature that suggested that was bullshit. There are still people who, and not older people, by the way. I think this is one thing that bothers me is a lot of people accuse older people of just being old and out of the loop. Fuck that. I see people younger than me believe in stupid shit like autism.
I know. Again, conversation. The guy was younger than me.
But I just wanted to touch on that because I've seen people make the argument that with that particular issue or with religious shit, stuff like that, that it's the older people and they're gonna believe what they believe. People younger than me, I'm 25, people 20, 21, there are those who believe that vaccines cause autism. You should have a gluten-free diet, whether you have celiac disease or not. Whether you have a legitimate medical reason to have a gluten-free diet, people still eat it regardless. People are picking and choosing reality, and you might not notice it, but it's disturbingly normal in American life that people do that in every realm.
Yeah, and they won't own up to it because it can't be wrong.
Yep. I don't think most of us even think about it. I think there are some people who will explicitly say things like reality is subjective or, to each his own, whatever. They will explicitly argue it, but most of us, I think we just take it for granted that it's true.
Yeah.
A lot of us do, at least, without ever thinking this is an argument about how we should conduct ourselves. I think a lot of us are just very used to the way this operates.
Yeah, I think we have become just blind to it. That's why I always find it fascinating how quick people are to jump to those things. It just really bothers me. It's just like going back to me telling the story about how I realized there was no Santa Claus on my own, At 6, I was able to reasonably figure this shit out, And there's you can do that. You can, if you actually take the time to think things through, you can reason out things and not be held to certain things as truisms all your life if you really want to. But I guess it's just like you said, just so used to it that we take it for granted.
I wonder how a conspiracy thinker's thoughts affect their children, if they do. There must be an interesting study on that.
Yeah, it's to me, I feel like we've, to get off on the side of the note, we frighten the fuck out of our kids for no reason with fake shit. Like he was saying the last time about how the whole Santa thing, if you don't be good, you won't get no toys. Okay, so is that the only motivation to be good? Is so you can get something from it, or the boogeyman concept? If you don't go to sleep, the boogeyman's going to come and get you. You just told a child that if they don't fall asleep, even if they may not be tired, that a fucking monster is going to come and kill them. like, like you just told your child they're going to get murdered. What the fuck? It's like stuff like that.
I mean, to be fair, I think some of those are tame. Throughout history, we've had some very dark lessons for kids. This whole idea of giving a shit about kids is relatively new in human history. Like, if you read The Better Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined, or something like that, he goes through the change in how we treat kids. A lot of their older stories were far more dark. But I guess what I was asking was, is a parent's conspiracy thinking making their kids more likely to be conspiracy thinkers? Like, are they learning a bad lesson here?
I think it probably can affect.
Because I was hoping that maybe that they're not as susceptible, but it could be that they are, if not biologically inheriting whatever set of genes might make them more susceptible to conspiracy thinking. Shit, I got several pastes in my pants. I fear that the next generation of kids is going to think that it's okay to be a conspiracy thinker. Free thinker.
I mean, it kind of is true because, again, straight up, as a child, you really don't know much. You don't know anything. Everything that you get within your, I'd say your first 10 to 12 years is given to you by other people. It's not until you start maturing and getting closer towards adulthood that you start to be more free thinking in most of our cases.
Many of our cases it's too late by then.
Yeah, it is, because people have like dug this into. It's just like I almost forgot this. When I used to work at this place, during Bush's first inauguration, I worked at one of the national monuments. And of course, there was a lot of Bush supporters there for it, hanging out at the monument. And there was this one particular family that had this little boy. He was fucking like 6 years old. And yet he's spouting all the like talking points that you would hear political pundits talking about why Bush is going to be a great president, why his policies are going to be this. Is like, there's no fucking way that this kid sat down one day and just started watching fucking CNN and MSNBC and all these different news things and formulated this. Who the fuck taught this child? But he was spitting that, like, he sounded better than Jake Tapper and all of them sound talking about that thing. It was amazing. We were sitting there in awe. We were like, yo, this kid like knows what the fuck he's talking about for real. It's like, somebody had to like indoctrinate that into his learning. They had to have been like saying, this is what we believe, this is what you should believe. And he bought it. Like at 6 years old, he was all in. Like, goddamn.
I wasn't certain about it because it seems obvious with things like religion, because people are more inclined. I think people are less inclined to talk politics with most kids than they are with religion per se. So it's always obvious with religion. But I've been thinking about it with politics because I took a trip up to New York for some training a month or two ago. And there was this group of kids, I guess they were like on a team or some shit. They seemed to have like similar clothing. So maybe it was like a sports team or academic thing. And this one kid, he had a Make America Great Again hat. And I remember thinking, this dude is like 11, 10. Like, what the fuck political opinions does he have? And they're not like vague. Like, he clearly is a Trump supporter somehow, even though he's like a child. Not like a child. He's a fucking child. He had adult escorts. He was on like a little school team. He was a kid. And he went out of his way to have this hat. And was a clear Trump supporter. And I was thinking, where the fuck does he get that? Are his parents Trump supporters? Is he just unusually interested in the news and formulated that decision by himself? I was doubtful. No offense to him, but
yeah, no.
I think that's one of the things that gets lost when we talk about all these things going on in the country, all the crazy people going around. Is a lot of these people have kids, and they are getting affected, and that concerns me. I don't want a generation growing up with this kind of madness in the White House, thinking that's how it's supposed to be, because they're going to vote at some point, and clearly they have no standard to base it on. So
Yeah, no, because honestly, it's just a lot of things, a lot of social behavior you can digest as a child, and that is something that I think that honestly does happen. I do think that people can straight up, quote unquote, engineer certain opinions. Again, it's generally not until most people get to that point where they start getting closer to adulthood and they are able to come in contact with other, you know, people in a less controlled environment. Because, like, elementary school is a very controlled social environment. There's little, beyond playground time, there really is little social structure within it. You know what I mean? For people to go and have conversation again. As a kid, we're all into toys and video games and stuff like that, and I guess you could say that in a way is kind of just the way that we like inadvertently um make teach our children not to have these discussions because you're a child, stay in a child's place, but type of thing. But like when you start getting to middle school and high school and you start to care a little bit more about your opinion and other people's opinion, you start to see these things. And that's where it's kind of the make or break period in your life. Like either you're going to stick to what you've been taught all your life, or you're going to grow into a different type of person, you know?
I would say even older environments are somewhat not controlled by the school, but socially controlled. It goes back to what I had said about everybody kind of deciding their own reality and everybody else saying, that's great. Do you? I'll do me. We don't have to talk. We all live in our own bubble. Um, you look at religion or politics, who really talks about that much in school at any point? Maybe
Yeah.
in college, if you happen to take like a philosophy class or some random religious studies class or some political. I don't recall taking a political class of any kind, come to think of it. So I don't even know what you would take. But for a lot of people, you don't talk about it. And part of the reason is too many of us consider it impolite to ever talk about things that are political or religious. So we discourage.
That's true, because the whole work, the unspoken rule, don't talk about politics or religion at work for a lot of places.
And a lot of people say that to school too, because I've heard people explicitly make the argument that you should not be talking about those things at least through high school at all. So you have generations of people reaching at least age 18 who aren't talking about this stuff anywhere, because you can't talk about it in school or work, and where else is there? Home, where they're shaping your opinions in the first place.
Yeah, it's a closed audience. You usually gonna think what you think at home with people who taught you that.
Yes. So part of it is that we make it uncomfortable to talk about it anywhere.
Yeah.
And another part of it is that we are okay with everybody just believing whatever, because I don't know, it's America. You have your own opinion, and that's fine. Not taking into account that your opinion does affect me. It affects at least how you vote, which is going to affect me. So yes, your opinion matters to me. We need to talk more in this country, definitely. And we don't, because we're just like, yeah, fuck it. Everything's great. I have my bubble. Keep the fuck out of it, not keep out of yours.
That is very true. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but that's true. Like, yeah, it's kind of crazy how we do that. But all right. So, closing thoughts on this subject. What do you think? Is there a way to break this cycle, or are we just doomed to repeat it over and over again?
To break this conspiratorial cycle?
Yeah, the conspiracy of keeping us in conspiracy theories.
I think it's going to take radical shifts in our culture that we're probably not going to make. I know that sounds depressing, but I've been thinking about it a bit, especially with this Trump fiasco. I was going to say Trump era, but the advent of Trumpism. everybody always asking, once Trump leaves, are we going to be able to pivot back into some state of normalcy? And I'm increasingly thinking the answer is no, because it seems like we've been on this trajectory well before Trump, especially as I'm reading this book. It feels like we've been on this trajectory since the beginning of the country, which is, I'm starting to wish I hadn't read this book because knowledge is a little scary. But uh, I think a lot of this is just the result of certain things baked into American culture. I was just talking about this whole idea that everybody's entitled to their own opinions. There's no compulsion to ever really talk and convince other people. I think that's a root of a lot of our problems, and we need to pull that root out of the ground. We need to embrace the idea of an objective reality that we can all share and exist in. We need to stop letting every stupid fucking idea have equal footing. Some ideas are just stupid. I'm talking about conspiracy thinking, not religious necessarily right now, although I do think some of those are stupid too. But not every idea about government and politics is equally intelligent. Not every news organization is equally biased. We need to stop equating everything across the board. Some things are objectively worse and dumber than others.
Yeah.
That is a fact. We need to start embracing the idea that there are such things as facts and objective reasoning, and that not everything is a matter of personal opinion. We might need to study history a bit more because, some of the techniques the Trump administration use are eerily reminiscent of things other countries have done.
Yeah, no, we definitely need to educate ourselves much more. But yeah, it's going to be a hard thing to change. All right, so I think we tried to avoid to be depressing and end up being depressing. But if you watch the show, you realize that it's just the running theme.
About positivity, I guess
Life sucks.
change it. I'm not confident right now, but I think there are ways. I guess the point I was making is it needs to be a purposeful, concentrated thing. I don't think it's just going to happen naturally that we're magically going to undo this web of fuckery here. I think we need to actually try to undo it.
Definitely.
So,
and with that, let's end on a positive. What do you want for Christmas, sir?
I want America to be rational.
Okay, that's not helping.
Okay.
Actually, do you make New Year's resolutions?
I actually don't.
Me neither.
What should I make?
It's funny because I actually got into a conversation at work where this guy, he was asking us, what's your resolutions? And I was like, to not make resolutions. He was like, that's not a real resolution. He was like, yeah, that's my annual one, because why am I going to resolve to do something that if I don't do, I'm going to end up lying to myself about? If I either do it or I don't do it. There's just like, I hit him with the Yoda, do or do not. There is no try. Yeah.
When I was a kid, I said that to my mom once, and she got really pissed. I think I had asked her to do something, and she's like, "I'm going to try," and I spit out that quote, and I guess she didn't recognize that quote, so she thought I was bossing her around. The look on her face, oh my god! First of all, the fear of death in my heart.
I can imagine like that, like the explanation that you had to get out of that.
I was quoting a movie. I was like so scared I couldn't even talk straight because for some reason I was like, everybody knows that quote. So.
It's a very famous quote. People should know, but yeah, I'm sure.
Right. Make a resolution, man. What do you got?
That's a big resolution, but if I were to make resolution based specifically on the show and the subject matters that we discuss, my resolution would be a shift in power in Congress for 2018. I resolve to go out and vote and encourage as many people as possible to vote. Even if you're going to vote for the wrong side, I may hate your guts, but I will respect you because you vote. Even if you vote independent, as long as you take it seriously and you go out and vote, I'm comfortable with that. So that's probably my biggest resolution, is to encourage people to vote more. I resolved to try to have a more positive outlook. Uh,
I like how
with
hesitant you were saying that.
Yeah, and I say try. I want to put emphasis on try because it's not something that I can necessarily accomplish, especially as long as this administration is in office. I resolved not to cheer too hard once Robert Mueller um, charges Trump. I'll try to be more sedated. Um, and I resolved not to continually laugh at Roy Moore because eventually that joke's going to get tired. And, you know, can't laugh at that old man forever. He's not going to be around for long.
God damn. you didn't have to say that. He'll be around in our hearts.
He'll ride off into the sunset on this horse eventually. Okay.
All right, those are better than my non-existent resolutions. Maybe I will resolute. Maybe I'll resolute to talk more to people about social issues. I was doing it quite a bit more before the Trump era, and things got very toxic. And I started to back a bit. I admit it was emotionally draining in a lot of cases. A lot of cases. Like I was going through this book again. I know I'm referring to the book a lot, but he was talking about people who've allowed this sort of unreason to go on, and he mentioned people who believe in it, you know, different classes of people. But one of the classes he said were like the squishies or whatever he called them, that were like people who got tired of fighting, and it made me feel like shit when he said that. But I was like, you know, fair enough. I guess I am part of the problem because I'm not as willing to talk about these problems as I used to be with everybody. So I guess I can resolve to be more conversational about important issues with not just Black Magus over here, but all people. And I resolved to have a six-pack by the end of the year. That's it. I'm gonna get hella fit. It's gonna be sick.
Good resolution.
Yeah.
I will continue to carry my cake. Like it's a smaller cake, but it will probably not go anywhere. I feel like I need to keep some fat because it's a part of my charm.
You hear that? Black thinks he's charming. That's what he calls him being an asshole. Charm.
Yeah, it is kind of charming because it's like, oh, look at this dickhead. So yeah, it is charming. Very charming.
I think that's it for my list. I can't make a list as long as yours.
I bullshitted mine because
you have more aspirations than I do.
I will say that mine is mostly bullshit anyway because I will fucking do a goddamn like I. By the way, I'm getting the dance together for a New Year's spectacular thing. But if he fucking gets arrested, I might have to make a promise to do another dancing video if he gets arrested or he gets kicked out of office. It's that serious. I'm willing to embarrass myself in my celebration.
We're going to have different reactions because I'm going to be hiding under my desk for a few months, you know, because I'm expecting riots if that happens. So.
Nah, they're not going to riot because they don't riot that way. Yeah,
I don't know, man. His supporters have lots of guns. That's kind of
they do. Yeah, they do, but for the most part, they're all talk. So, yeah, I said it. Goddamn gun nuts, y'all don't really do shit. You do shit like you did over in, what was that, Oregon, where you hide in a federal building with no hostages, by the way, and threatened violence. Like, okay, so you're lucky that the law doesn't just want to always go in blasting and shooting unless you're of a particular persuasion. Because if it were in any other scenario, if a bunch of fucking black guys took over a federal building and dared the government to come in, that fucking building wouldn't be standing. They'd level the shit out of that. So yeah, whatever. You guys are all talk. You know how far you can go because you know ain't nobody gonna do anything, and you're not gonna do anything. So shut the fuck up, gun nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to make it clear that that's just his opinion. You know, don't shoot me. He was the one talking shit. I'm not talking shit, so his opinions are his own and not the product of the Reason Reborn podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We'll go with that disclaimer. Sorry. Anyway.
Drag me to hell with you. Fuck that.
Yes. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this podcast and this year. So you guys have safe, happy holidays. Get stupid drunk on New Year's, but don't get stupid drunk to the point where you risk your lives. Enjoy your Christmas, your Hanukkah, your Kwanzaa as you go over the 7 ideals. God, that has to be boring. You have to give a speech every day on why as you reflect on certain topics. I would be pissed if my family said we celebrate Kwanzaa and we had to do this. Like, I do enough at school. God damn it. I don't need to like fucking do dissertations at home for a holiday and think that's like celebrating.
I'm gonna have to look up Kwanzaa because I don't know shit about it.
Yeah, all I know is
like, holiday. Fuck.
Different things. I don't think they give gifts. They may give gifts.
So they don't really love each other, basically what you're saying.
I keep telling you, it's the cheapskates holiday. It's the one that you pick. When you don't want to give gifts, but you find a social, racial reason to say because this is ours, and this is what we do as African Americans type of deal. To justify it. Seriously. Again, he doesn't share my opinions, people, so don't come at him. Just come at me. But yeah. Yeah, like at least I know Christmas has been commercialized to the point where it's like everybody's it's like, yeah, fuck it. We just end it for the gifts. You know, at least there's some. I mean, there are still people who believe in a religious aspect, but most of us kind of.
Man, Jesus is the reason.
Yeah, I think most of us submitted to the fact that, yeah, this is just about coming up on some prizes.
Yeah.
And again, he doesn't necessarily share my opinions. So if you
want to get me some shit, send me a PlayStation 4, man. I need to play Horizon. I want to play.
There you go.
God of War, fucking The Last of Us 2. Show me you love me. Send me some
PS shit. Pro for my man over here, please. Donate that.
I ain't got that kind of money, bro.
Huh? No, I said somebody give it to you, not you.
Yeah, I was saying somebody should do that because I'm not gonna buy it. You can rest assured that I'm not gonna buy it for myself. So buy it for me.
Even better, get him a console, and then we can actually do a gaming podcast. If you guys do that, that'll be the excuse. That'll be the business excuse.
Write it off on the taxes. Yeah,
you need to date so we can do a gaming podcast. Boom.
You must be able to write that off on your taxes. That's charity, right? You guys can definitely write that off somehow.
Yes, you can write that off somehow.
I'm helping you guys out with your taxes.
I work in a bank, so I will find out what the rules are to become a charitable entity, and I will turn my bank account into a charity if I need to, and not spend the money on anything except for his PlayStation, which is for work, just equipment.
Professional needs. And here I am. Exactly. I'm scrolling through Facebook, just saw some shit about crystal healing, so happiness.
And on that note, you guys take it easy. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next time. Have a happy holiday or holidays if you celebrate more than one.
Fuck that. It's Merry Christmas. God damn. Jesus is the reason.
And tomatoes are fruit, not vegetables. See you guys later. Peace.